All right, let's turn our attention to the Washington Commanders, who are sort of an interesting team where I feel like even though our simulation is more conservative than Vegas, we came out lower on Washington than Vegas. And I think we're clearly lower on Washington than conventional wisdom. And I think the reason why is despite the fact that he was average statistically last year, we are really down on Carson Wentz, both the projection system because it's incorporating what Carson Wentz did 2 years ago, and us subjectively just there's a lot of belief among all of us that Frank Reich made Wentz passable last year. That without the Frank Reich offense, this is no diss on Scott Turner, but we don't know what we're going to get out of Scott Turner. That Wentz is going to decline in Washington. And even though they're Washington, the defense has to be better because they can't be as bad as on third downs as they were last year. That this team is just this is not a playoff team.
Do they have to be better when Chase Young looks like he might miss the start of the season, though? That's one of the pieces of bad news coming out of Commanders camp right now. And I get the impression that the Commanders are one team when you look at them on paper, especially from a fantasy standpoint. There's a dichotomy between the fantasy look and the frontline talent look, if you count Chase Young and those guys, and just what you see when you look at the sum of the parts right now. I think that might be why we're below conventional wisdom, because forget the subjective element of that. When you throw all these pieces into the blender, they don't come out looking particularly good.
I mean, I will point out we have their defense slightly above average. First of all, look, there is so much talent on that defensive line. Even if Chase Young isn't healthy to start the season, they've got to be better than what they were last year as far as pass rush. And the secondary, right? We know guys like William Jackson were better the year before last. There's got to be some positive regression from the secondary. The problem is that the offense, yes, I mean, they've got Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson is an interesting player, and John Dotson is not a favorite of playmaker scorer. They're depending a lot on him, a rookie. You just don't know what you're going to get out of a rookie. A lot of it just comes down to Wentz. We just don't like their offense.
And I think going back to defense for a second, we brought this up in the book. Obviously, there's big regression potential here because of that third and fourth pass DVOA, which is really just awful, worse in the league. But at the same time, they didn't really change a lot. And teams that do get better, that do regress up, have actually made a lot of changes. Like we noted in the book that the Raiders replaced like 5 or 6 starters. The Commanders are bringing back their 7 most players with most snaps from last year, and they didn't add like a lot of new depth either. It's more just, hey, here's Phildarian Mathis at defensive line, and good luck, guys. You'll be better this year. I promise.
They're depending on the idea that the veterans will regress, guys like Jackson, and that the youngsters will get better. That Benjamin St. Juste will be better. That Jamin Davis will be better.
That's a lot. That's a lot to put on. The linebacking core does not look particularly great. You look at great Ron Rivera defenses. They've got the excellent linebacking core behind the defensive line. I don't necessarily see it. Guys haven't stepped up the way they were going to. I mean, I'm fine with 12th on defense, but I'm also very fine with 31st on offense. And people they want violence. They want me to choose violence about Carson Wentz. I get it. But mathematically, why is this offense 31st, Aaron?
Mathematically, I think it has to do in part with the Wentz projection, because the Wentz projection is looking at multiple years. It's not just looking at last year. It's looking at the year before, and the year before he was horrible. Right. There's no reason to believe in the offensive line giving them any value. Losing Brandon Scherf is a big deal. I mean, adding Norwell is nice, but it's not a full replacement. They are depending on a rookie wide receiver. They're depending on Curtis Samuel, who's mostly been vaporware. But it really is a lot about Wentz and what he was 2 years ago. Not what he was last year, but the likelihood that he could regress to what he was 2 years ago.
And the idea that he's going to come into Philadelphia and not wet himself, and that when Eagles fans bust down to Washington, as they will for the Washington game, he's also not going to have a complete emotional meltdown. And again, like we're joking, I do the whole Wentz thing. I did this before. It's over. Chris Ballard ripped him. Frank Reich ripped him.
The Colts ripped him. They totally did.
Yes. His former employers are say worse things about him than I can ever say about him. If you don't know who this young man is now, by now, this is who he is. And I'm waiting to hear the redemption story about how, he's like mentally tougher and changed his mindset. It's not coming. That's not coming. This is who he is. So if it's not Frank Reich scheming up layups, play action, deep shots to a guy who's going to 50-50 ball for it, if it's not that, you're going to see left-handed shovel past Wentz again.
I will say in his defense, but not his defense, but in Scott Turner's defense, Scott Turner was second in the league in rate of play action last year. So they will be dialing up play action for Wentz. They will protect him with play action, absolutely.
Well, that's going to be a problem because he can't move.
The problem with Wentz is he can move just well enough to think to go into Michael Vick mode in his brain and start trying to scramble.
Right. That's when all the worst things happen. Mike was talking about the fantasy value, kind of shock value you look at the team with. And yeah, it does sound good that you're going to go like Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson's first round pick and Samuel and Logan Thomas still here. And yeah, like those guys could be good or they could be hurt like they were last year. And then all of a sudden you're Wentz throwing to John Bates 10 times a game. And that's not great for anybody.
And Diami Brown is hurt right now, a guy they counted on a lot last year. And again, we're hearing Samuel's back. And what we're hearing is Samuel is in back on one-on-one isolated drills on the sidelines doing his own thing. I think he was there for all of last year in that exact mode. So I like Samuel. I want to see him play. But we've seen this movie.
By the way, I will say for those curious about the offense, the one offense that is worse in the numbers is Seattle. So if you're asking like, oh, they're 31st, who's worse? That's the answer. And I will, in Washington's defense, their schedule is also really easy. Like I said, Philadelphia's schedule there's a gap between Philadelphia and everyone else. But Washington is the second easiest schedule in the league by our numbers. Everyone in the NFC East has an easy schedule, partly because of playing each other, partly because of playing the AFC South, NFC North. We have Green Bay lower than everybody else does. If things go right for DC, like things could go right. Maybe Wentz has another year where he's average. Maybe the defense rebounds. This is a team where if they're average on offense and defense, the schedule can sneak them into the playoffs.
Commanders over 9 wins, plus 225. Awful schedule. Defense could be above average. Decent skill position players. Anyone seeing 9 wins, plus 225, you get push Zilla if they go 9-8.
I'm out on over 9.
Yeah, can't do it.
All right, how about this? Under 7 at plus 185.
I'm much more likely to go with that.
Yeah, that'd be much easier to pick.
It's the Giants that scare me with that. The Giants just handing them 2, and then them stealing one of the others from the Cowboys and Eagles in like one of the 4.
And then the AFC South teams, and
one more. Commanders to reach the playoffs. Once again, Commanders to miss the playoffs. There's no meat on that bone. It's minus 200 or something like that. But Commanders to make the playoffs, plus 150. Any takers at plus 150 for the Commanders?
I mean, based on our percentages, I'd need to get like plus 200 or more. Like even with our projections being more conservative and more grouped around 500 than conventional wisdom, we only have the Commanders making the playoffs 30% of the time.